Hi guys, welcome back. Welcome to your history lesson for today. So if you take a look at the board, you can see that here what it says is Tudor houses. So what does this mean? Today we're going to continue talking about how people used to live in the past. Specifically, what were the houses like where they lived in the past? Now, in the past 2 or 3 lessons, we talked quite a lot about Celtic crown houses. Yes, you showed me the models that you've made yourself, which were very, very good. I'm a little bit impressed, I have to confess. I have here a picture, that I just wanted to show you, to remind ourselves of one last time of a few details. So Celtic crown houses. This is what they would look like if we cut out the front wall, so we can see that everybody's here in the same space. They're inside, protected from the weather. Their houses were built on the hillsides, close to each other, so they could protect each other from enemies, and so on and so on. So Celtic crown houses existed a very long time ago, and the next type of homes that we're going to talk about, Tudor houses, actually came into existence quite a long time after the Celts. So it's actually a bigger difference in time between the time of Celtic crown houses and Tudor homes. Okay, so that's this much, let's say, then Tudor houses and modern times. Okay, so what are these Tudor houses? So first I'm going to show you just a little picture so you can see what they looked like. Okay, so why did people start building houses like this, and how are they different to Celtic crown houses? Well, first of all, we can easily see that they look completely different, right? Okay, but what about its functions? So what can be done in a Tudor house that can't be done in a Celtic crown house? Well, first of all, Tudor houses were much bigger, and they were built at a time where people didn't only see houses as a place where they're protected, when they didn't want their home just to be a shelter from animals, weather, and potential enemies, but they actually wanted to make the house in which they lived look nice. And also, the thing about Tudor homes is that it was no longer just one room where all the people would be together, and sometimes even the animals they had, in one communal space. No, here, one house would be divided in different rooms sometimes. And not just that, but actually houses would have floors, So I'm now going to show you a little bit of a video just so you see how in the past looked the streets of a town in Tudor times. Okay, so you will see a lot of Tudor homes, and you will see that the streets where these houses were quite narrow. The houses were very close to each other, and there wasn't a lot of spacing between them. So you can see that this street doesn't give you a lot of space. And sometimes when you have houses or buildings so close to each other, the sunlight can't really get through to the street. So these streets would sometimes be very, very dark, even during daytime. Okay, so here you could take a peek at a little bit how these houses were made. And what we're going to do now, we're going to take a closer look okay, to see how they were made, how they were constructed, okay? So we're going to try to figure out and remember what are some key features. And in order to remember what are those key features, we are going to compare them a little bit with Celtic roundhouses. So in this way, we're also going to remember what's the difference between these two types of houses, okay? So the first thing is that the walls in Tudor homes were made of wooden frames. So you can see here these wooden frames, okay? Now, what you will see later when you look at home, or when you look at this presentation at home, is that these wooden frames are not perfectly even. The reason for that is there were not machines to cut the trees, yeah? So these pieces of wood were cut by hand, so they're like a little bit rough in surface, it's not smooth. And now between these wooden frames, there's wattle and daub. So the same material that was used for a Celtic roundhouse, but now it's filling out a more strong structure, okay? So it says houses were made of wooden frames, the gaps were filled with wattle and daub, yeah? Okay, now look here. You can see on the outside these wooden pieces, yeah, black timber. So that's the external part of the wooden frame that made these houses so much stronger than Celtic roundhouses. So the wooden frame was often covered in black tar to stop it from rotting. So you can see that this wood here is quite dark. The reason for that is because there was a coat of something called tar. Tar is black gooey matter, and the thing is that when you put tar over a piece of wood, any water from rain or whatever can't go through the tar, so it doesn't make the wood wet, and in that way the wood can last a longer time. Yeah, when the wood gets wet, it can easily be destroyed. Now here is that wooden frame. Actually, you saw a little bit earlier in the picture what it looked like in the wall. You saw it from the outside, and this is from the inside of the house, yeah? So this is the wooden frame, and the walls in between were filled out with wattle and daub. So it says Tudor houses were made from wooden beams. The beams were uneven because they were cut by hand and not by machine, as I've already said. So let's see what's next. Let's look at the roof. So you can see that the shape of the roof is different from that one of Celtic roundhouse, yeah? That was a cone, and this is more like a triangular prism. So what is happening here, that there were two ways how to do a roof, yeah? Either way how you did it, the roof was always steep like this, yeah? It was steep, so it could have been thatched, or it could have been made of clay tiles or slates, yeah? So there are two options how to make it, but the shape is pretty much the same. Now, as if you remember, I said that these houses were much bigger than Celtic round houses, and they could have more than one floor. And the particular thing that they did is that the higher floor was bigger, was larger than the lower one, okay? So this protruding part was called the jetty. Okay, now look at the windows. So in Tudor times, they started using glass for windows. It's just that there was one tricky part, and that to have one big piece of glass to put in your window was very, very expensive. So what they did instead, they made their windows out of smaller pieces of glass put together. Okay, so here it says these are the key features, things to remember about Tudor homes. So the walls were filled out with wattle and daub. Timber was used for the wooden frame. The roof was steep. The upper floor was larger, more spacious than the lower one, and it was called jetty. And the windows were made of tiny panes of glass. Okay, so how are we going to check this. So when we have our next history lesson together, we will go over this thing here. Okay, so this is a picture of a Tudor house which still exists. Yeah, it survived it survived a few centuries, not really that many, but a few, which is a lot for a home. And you can see these dots, these crosses. You can actually click here, and this is a hotspot. I'm not sure you will be able to do this at home, but we're definitely going to do this in class. So when you click here, okay, it tells you a few things about this house. For example, chimney. Chimneys were patterned and made from cut brick. So you see, guys, in Tudor homes, they already had chimneys, whereas if you remember, in Celtic Crown houses, the most similar thing they had was a hole on the roof to let the smoke out. Okay, what else do we have here? The roof, it was thatched or maybe made out of slate, but definitely it was always steep. Okay, so guys, those are some things that I wanted you to know about Celtic roundhouse. And then how are you going to show me that you remembered some of these details? Well, how about you draw a Tudor house for me? So feel free to take look at this video again, go back, look at the picture, look at the video that I've sent you of a Tudor home, and try to draw one for me. So remember that windows are made of smaller pieces of glass. Yeah, there were many little tinier glass panes. Okay, remember that there's a steep roof. The upper floor is larger than the lower one. Okay, add the chimney. Remember the outside timber, which was covered in black tar. The walls were usually whitewashed, so they were painted white. So try to draw a Tudor house for me for our next class, and we'll go over this picture and see how much we managed to remember from this video. Guys, see you soon for your craft activity. Bye-bye.